Today on the Patriot podcast, we will be looking at how government policy affects the lives of Nigerians. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dale. And on this topic, we have some guests right here, our in-house analysts, and of course, we have another guest that will be discussing how the government policies affects you and I. We have Dr. Maxwell Loco. He is the executive director of the household fintech OPE, and he was the former managing director NTA TV Enterprise Limited. Glad to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And we also have Uchenna Simon, aka Prince UC Ngawa. It's so good to have you today.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's start with the issue of the policy. So we have, in the past few months, a whole lot of policy change here and there. But let's focus it down to the issue of finances, policies that affect finance in Nigeria. How do you see that affecting or changing lifestyle of Nigerians? Did it affect them in any way? What do you see around?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's been 5 weeks since the president assumed duties as the president and commander-in-chief of Nigeria. And again, as the 16th president of the Federal Republic. And in barely 5 weeks, even though some people may argue that it's rather too early in the day, considering that he has a 4-year tenure, to begin to assess his performance or the impact of his decisions in 5 weeks. But I think, even as the president himself said, he's very conscious of the responsibility that Nigerians have reposed in him, and he's willing to be held accountable. So I think 5 weeks is not too early. And like you said, he has taken some very far-reaching decisions that has attracted mixed public reactions. I'll say mixed because some of the reactions are positive and some of the reactions, of course, are negative. You can't always have it right. But like you said, a lot of the policies he has taken so far, or decisions he has taken, one or two that stands out is a financial subsector, like you just mentioned. And that, of course, brings us to the issue of harmonizing the multiple exchange rates. You don't need any serious economic analysis to know that before now, we were actually setting ourselves to self-destruction as a nation. No nation that wants to be the top economies in the world will allow for multiple exchange rates that the margins are so wide. It was a decision that I think the president took a lot of courage to implement because of its implications. And probably it's because of the implications in the past that a lot of other presidents shied away from it. But let's quickly look at how it has impacted. But like I said, we have to look at the pros, the cons. Now, what is the argument for those who are supporting the harmonization of the I and E window? By the way, the I and E window is where the I and E simply means the investors and exporters windows. That is where the buyers and the sellers of the naira, or the foreign currency rather, come to agree on the mutually acceptable rate. So in which case they now allow the naira to float. Now, if you allow the naira to float in that window, you're invariably saying that the rate should be determined by demand and supply. It's a common economic whatever. You need dollar. I have dollar to sell. So supersedes the order will determine the rate. That is basically what it is. As against the former policy where the CBN dictates the rate, which left a lot of room for arbitrage, left a lot of room for round tripping, and so forth, and a lot of room for corruption in the system. Unlike now, where the two windows are now closing up. Now, you'll be surprised now that there is no motivation again to go to the Malam and procure dollar. You would rather go to the bank because the rates are basically almost the same. So, but while that is good as a policy, as an economic policy, there is also a lot of fears that there is a sudden devaluation of the naira, because the naira lost its value by 42% just by that pronouncement. 42%. And what is the implication? It also means that naturally when your currency is losing value, there is a possibility of inflation and hyperinflation, which also results in unemployment and so forth. And again, the government is already, our debt, foreign debt is at about $42 billion, which translates to about 74 or so trillion. Now, by that singular decision, our debt has suddenly increased from 72 trillion to 90 trillion.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, we are grappling with how to pay the debt that has already been imposed on us.
Yeah.
Now you take a decision that has suddenly increased the debt without you necessarily borrowing that money.
Let me ask Prince Ngawa, if you think, I want to take it back a little bit. Even before President Tinubu took over, we had the cashless policy. Do you think that as leaders in Nigeria, are there costs that are being counted before some of these decisions are taken? Because now, yes, we're looking at the good side and the bad side. Already the debt rate increases. Do we count the costs of these decisions before we take them?
Yeah, well, for the present administration, I feel they have counted their losses and counted their gains already.
Yeah.
Because this is a president that said that the first day I'll get the ground running. Second day, keep it running. And what he promised, that's what he did. The first day he got to office after swearing in, he got the ground running by removing the subsidy. So I feel, I think they foresee this coming, all these challenges and all. But like he rightly said, doctor said that the challenges are what other presidents are actually shying away from. So I feel this is always the fear. All right, this is always the fear. And at times, out of political reasons, you decide not to take a decision that you actually know it will help your people, but you avoid it because you know it will affect your political strategy, actually. And just like Garba Shehu said last week, that if President Buhari actually removed the subsidy during the campaigns, that Tinubu will not win the election. So, if you look at it, I think it's a calculated risk, but we believe is a good one that will favor Nigerians. And but to a very large extent, my question is, when will it stop? And what are the strategies put in place to reduce this suffering? Because what is really happening right now is, a case of nobody has a choice. That's why you even hardly hear people crying of the suffering, like they are taking the pain in for how long?
Now, you just touched the part that I wanted doctor to respond to. Doctor, you are a political economist.
Yeah.
So now let's look at the effects of these decisions, these policies on the average Nigerian. How does it affect them now? If there's an increase in the debt now because of the whatever policies that are on ground now, how does it affect the average Nigerian?
Well, like I said, it's all a matter of the government weighing their options,
Yes.
because it really, really had no option but to close that window. We'll soon come to, just like Prince said, I'll soon come to the issue of the subsidy removal.
Yes.
But you see, the government will also tell you that with this, the I&E window stuff that is harmonized now, the government actually is going to generate more revenue. You see the other side of it now.
Okay.
There is going to be also an attraction to foreign direct investment. There will be capital inflow rather than outflow, because people were really scared to come and invest in Nigeria. You understand? So, and if the government is able to take advantage of these advantages that will come with the harmonization, then they can cushion the impact that is going to have on the populace. Now, what are the savings we are going to be making from this window, I&E window that has been harmonized? Because now the average Nigerian is only worried because the naira he has in his pocket has lost its value by 40%.
Yes.
So you ask, what is the impact on him? That is the immediate impact on him because of the inflation. What your 1,000 naira can buy before, you need about 1,400 or probably 2,000 naira to buy now. And there hasn't been any commensurate increase in your salary. There hasn't been any commensurate increase in your
sources of income.
So, what the government needs to do, and it's similar to the palliative that is being proposed for the subsidy removal, is to make sure that the advisors put a robust plan in place to make sure that they douse inflation. And there are many instruments that you can use to do that without necessarily imposing more sufferings to the people, to the citizens.
Because what it looks like right now is the government is actually getting a whole lot back. Now, we have a 400 million naira recovery in 1 month after
400 million.
That's billion, right? 400 billion recovered in 1 month. And we know when the president said, okay, so this is a committee to work on palliative. We're not hearing anything. It's at a meeting, Nigerians are just left in the dark. So how can the government use these resources to help alleviate livelihood for Nigerians, if you were to recommend?
Well, first of all, I feel one aspect they should tackle is the transportation, because this is the only aspect that actually affected the major popular Nigerians. Because just last week, somebody said he's not using his vehicle anymore. But you realize that people that are using their personal vehicle and the transportation, you realize that even the transportation is way higher than you using your own vehicle. So I think government should actually put more attention on transportation. Secondly, in terms of palliative, but palliative in the aspect of feeding, that has to do with getting enough foodstuff to share to the people.
Because
majorly people that actually need them more.
When you were talking about the effect on transportation, I think but that could be the major hit, but it has affected almost every other thing.
Yes.
The cost of one measure of rice now, I think, is the same amount as beans,
Mm.
which was not like that before. So I saw in the news today a billionaire's wife complaining about how much tomatoes is. So if people at that level are even complaining, so imagine normal Nigerians.
No, we are not talking of people that want to just, bring attention to themselves. We are not talking of those ones.
Okay.
There is no way you can expect me to take Indimi's daughter serious for having tomatoes cost. That's an insult. I
Really?
don't take such statements serious.
Okay.
There are people that will talk. There are people that will comment
Yes.
on things like that you should actually take serious, but certainly not the Indimis.
It doesn't affect a
No,
particular.
no.
Anyway,
What's
yeah,
your thought?
Prince is right
Yes.
because in the lowest end
Mm.
of the economic pyramid
Mm.
are the poor people.
Yes.
Now, the president said that the National Economic Council, which is led by the vice president Kashim Shettima,
Mm.
to go immediately and work on the process, of intervention. And I think some of the three things, one of which he mentioned that is on the table.
Mm.
One, they are looking at a minimum of 200,000 minimum wage, 200,000 naira minimum wage. They are looking at the what they call the compressed gas buses, because if you talk about transportation, those transportation will be using fuel.
Yes.
The fuel that is no longer subsidized.
That's right.
So who runs it? Now, what the government is trying to do is that they are going to put in place what they call the compressed gas buses, something like that. They are not going to use the normal fossil fuel. And the third thing I think that is on the table is cash transfers to the vulnerable families. Now, how do you decide who is vulnerable is another thing entirely. Everybody will tell you that he's vulnerable. But like he said, there are indices we use to determine who is a vulnerable person in our society. He just mentioned the name. I don't want to re-echo. But if that person complains about something, you won't take that person seriously. You know that person is beyond that. Probably the person is complaining for the sake of complaining or for drawing attention.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But there are indigent, very vulnerable people that require this
Society.
intervention. So they are talking about cash transfers. I don't know how the government is going to work that out. In the past, I think it was not properly handled. You can see they made a caricature of it. Those are the critical things I think they are putting on board as a way of social safety net. Because the argument that fuel subsidy removal was okay, but the timing can never ever be right. Any time is the right time. But the argument is that there should have been this social safety net in place before the subsidy removal. But again, if you look at it, you mentioned 400 billion that will be saved. It's not really saved yet. It's a projection because it was the NMPC, the GMD, that actually was arguing that if subsidy was removed, government will be able to save 400 billion. You understand? So people are holding him to his word
Accountable,
now.
yes.
Absolutely. You made that pronouncement. Now the subsidy is removed. The question people are asking, where is the 400 billion? And if the 400 billion is actually there, begin to tell us how you are going to use it. Now, is the government going to plow this 400 billion into these palliatives, like Prince said, or into these critical places? Because initially they said, if we remove this subsidy, we are going to save a lot of money that only a few people, like the oil marketers and some corrupt people who are supposed to manage that industry, were the beneficiary. Now we are going to stop them from doing that. Only between January and June this year, government has spent 23 trillion on subsidy, going by the average of 400 billion per month. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Now, some people are arguing that there's actually no subsidy, but we don't want to go into that now. Let's assume there was actually subsidy, and government has taken the bull by the horn. You know what? This 23 trillion will have saved it from January till now. But people are not patient. They are not saying, look, don't allow it to accumulate to another 23 trillion. We are holding you accountable for the 1 month you have stayed in office. And in the 1 month, you have removed subsidy on your inauguration speech. So by now, we should have 400 billion. So show to people, prove to people that they are not making these sacrifices in vain. He said it. People are giving the president a chance. They are suffering and smiling because they have been told that, look, we are taking you to El Dorado. We are taking you from, it's no longer going to be business as usual. But they want you to begin to show them because the impact is already telling on them. Families are some people, you may think it's a joke. Some people are beginning to withdraw their children from school. Some people can't go to work because their transportation to work is higher than the salary they are getting. You know, SMEs that constitutes the bulk of our informal sector and depend on this energy, which is called fuel, they are folding up because they cannot cope. Now you are talking of another policy, in addition to that, of a 40% increase in energy, which is electricity. So, you know, I think the president's strategy, I don't know, probably is that while the honeymoon lasts, they may impose as many things that I should before people
eyes are clear.
Before people's eyes are clear. Let me quote you directly. Because if you say you are going to do them in stages, trust Nigerians. After the first one, the second one, look, there was no riot, there was no strike, there was nothing. If this had happened in any other administration, I'm telling you there's going to be a problem. He mentioned a statement credited to Garbachew, who said if his principal had removed oil subsidy, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu will have lost election. So what does that tell you? That the policy in principle is not good for the people, because people will be so angry that they will not vote you. So what does that tell you?
Even if it's for their own good.
Even if it's for their own good, you know. So what a government should do always is to say, look, and that is where the issue of constant communication, communicating government policy to the people in a manner that they understand. Already, it's not properly communicated, but they understand. They are trying to understand. But they are now beginning to ask, look, Charlie Ball will say, Mumu don't do. No. We have been patient before, nobody should. Now we want you to be telling us on a daily basis what they are going to do with our money. So that is exactly what is happening.
Now both of you gentlemen, you are in the media space. Do you think that we have enough information? Does the media have enough information to give to the people about the issue of policies?
Yeah, well, one aspect of this administration I just foresee is that there is they have this open door policy. What is it you want to know? We are not hiding anything. Come in and make your research and all. We are open, okay? And that is what the past administrations failed to do. Okay. At times, you don't need to hide informations. You just need to put it out there. People should disseminate it. Some that will make good use of it, fine. But hiding it will accumulate. Even if there is a problem, it will get worse. So I feel this administration will actually be so transparent to tell Nigerians what they have done, what they have not, and what they are yet to do. Because one thing that will make this administration to fail is if they refuse to, start listening to people's complaint, people that want to advise the president, there shouldn't be, people defending the whole territory not to reach the president. But I think he's the type that, so far, he is the type that is open to advices. He welcomes people. He doesn't stop anybody. But I pray that continues. So last time I heard they have to even force him to retire from the office because he is usually meant to leave 6 or 7, but he usually stayed in the office 8, 9 and all. Okay. So that's from the aspect of somebody that they said is sick. Anyway, I don't know about that. But for somebody at his age to be keep seeing people from 9 a.m. to 8 o'clock in the evening tells so much about his ability to serve. And another thing I feel they should look at is that when when you when you are even trying to tell me that you will give me honey, I will wait because I trust you, you will give me honey. It will get to a particular time, even though I know you are capable to give me honey, it will get to a point that I will start feeling like I have to revolt. And I pray they have solutions before it gets to that point. People are not talking. Okay, at the moment, nobody is saying anything.
It looks like
The ones that are talking about the hardship and all, some are, political opponents that, that one way or the other tries to say one or two words. But the main people that are meant to complain are not complaining because they convince them.
Yes.
Because,
where can
there
they
is,
complain? That's
yes, there is something there is something between the poor
the thing. Yes.
and the rich. Why people are quiet about the technically quiet, not 100% quiet, is because the poor believes any policy that will affect the rich is okay with it, even if he will suffer, he doesn't mind. Okay, when he had that this subsidy, the rich are the one benefiting from it, he said remove it. You understand?
Yes.
Even if he will suffer, he doesn't mind. So that is what is actually happening. But it will get to a point that he will start to feel, it's like the government are our enemies as well. So I pray they have solutions to these things before it gets to that point.
Passing information to the people, and Prince have spoken about where the government needs to pass information and let people know this is where we are. But sometimes you find out that the people don't have a way to pass their own information back to the government. This is what we're suffering. This is what we need. This is how we feel. So, how can we have a balance of this, looking at the role of journalism in making sure that people understand the policies, what are the benefits for them, what are the challenges, and let the government know that this is how it is affecting the people?
Well, it's not for nothing that they say the media is the fourth estate of the realm. They are the mouthpiece of the helpless, of those who don't have mouth to speak. Now, gagging, what you call media gagging, is what I advise that they should avoid immediately. The fact that the media organization is critical about your policies, about your activities, about everything around you, does not necessarily mean that you are enemy. So they are not enemy of the state, but they are speaking for those who don't have a voice, and they are asking the critical questions. Now, I want to believe that the president, being a media owner himself, before he became president, he knows the importance, the tremendous importance and the role that the media and communication can play in disseminating information to the people, and also using the same channel to get information back to the people. Because if you don't gag the mainstream media, or if you gag them rather, you are now making the social media to thrive. And you and I know that in social media, everybody is an editor, everybody is a reporter. Now, with artificial intelligence, they can as well pick the president's head and put in another body, or pick his body and put in another head and make caricature of the whole thing. And the gullible viewers or listeners or those consuming those content will believe it. So now what we need to do is to ensure that the president opens completely a line of communication. I'm happy he says that it sounds so far, or it looks so far, that they are an open administration. You must open the line of communication and make sure you appoint those who are going to handle your media or your communication. Employ professionals who know how to work with the mainstream media. Let me just say something that, supposed to be like a joke, but for some of us who came from a background of mainstream media, it wasn't really a joke. Somebody said, oh, recently, the NTA that was notorious for lethargy in reportorial and whatever has suddenly become the number one in breaking news that people trust. Do you understand what I mean? Now, you could see the same thing in any social media platform,
Yes.
but people be like, oh, if I don't see it on this media platform, I don't believe it to be true yet.
I think I'm one of those people.
So I think the president has started well by ensuring that the government-owned media is the first to break all his. I told you he has done tremendously well. He has hit the ground running literally, and each of the times that there were breaking news, it broke from the NTA. So everybody was like, was it in the NTA? If it wasn't in the NTA, it's not true yet. So I think he has started well in terms of opening up. And then when we see the appointments of the ministers and those who are going to manage the information and communication, then we'll begin to have an idea how they may want to handle that. But they should understand that it's very critical, it's very important. People are not complaining yet because from word of mouth, they believe that this is for everybody's good. From word of mouth, they believe that it is rich that is suffering, not them. But even though they may be suffering more than the rich, like Prince said. But we need a way to communicate this to them effectively. And the media has a critical role to play by setting the agenda. The media can also set the agenda by saying, look, you know what? Moving forward, we have to censor ourselves to make sure that we sieve the chaff from the grains and make sure that whatever we dish out there is the truth. It's not all about patronage, about just making the president feel happy, but saying it the way it is, speaking truth to power. And if any media organization speaks truth to power, they should not look at that media organization as an enemy. But to be honest, they should look at them as friends in progress because it makes them to be online.
Be online. I like that part. So now let's look at when we had the issue of the cashless policy. I want to go back to that a little bit. We had people went through a whole lot. That's the truth. Rich and poor. It was crazy on the streets, and we had organizations like Dr. Locals who came in, to help all of that. So I'd like to let's use Prince Ingawa as a Nigerian who might have had an experience with OPE. Did you know about OPE before the cashless policy? And how did you think that as a fintech organization, it helped Nigerians? By the way, do you use OPE?
Well, I think this question should go to doctor.
Well, he needs to know if they are actually doing something.
Honestly, before the cashless policy,
Yes.
OPE, to me, I see OPE as all these POS vendors. That's where I place them, But surprisingly, after the cashless policy, OPE was everywhere. The only mobile banking app that is accessible and successful in transactions turns out to be OPE. So shocking. Anyway, because
maybe
people don't.
This is good feedback for doctor.
No, it's not. It's what actually happened. I'm
Yes.
saying, So people never expected that such platforms that are not the big names are actually the channel in which people were able to access their phone to make transactions and all. So I don't know how doctor and the team did it, but the thing turned out well.
Yeah.
Yes, it do turn out well, and that is why at times I keep saying it that government should always come in to support some of these
Innovations.
organizations. Do you understand?
Exactly.
They might look small, but you don't know when you will make a very good use of them,
Mm.
and they just did.
Mm.
So is a wonderful achievement for OP, and my prayers is that let it not end in cashless policy,
Mm.
that they should continue.
So now,
Eh,
looking at what Prince Ingawa just said now, do you think that, would you tell the government to use organizations, private organizations, to help, alleviate some of these policies that have stretched Nigerians? What would you say about that?
Mm. Are you talking about
So now we
public-private
have
partnership?
possibly, because it was during, like he said, it was during the cashless policy that now we saw a private organization, coming out to step in. If you ask me, it stepped in between some of the hardship that would have fallen on Nigerians. So
Yeah.
it made it easy, sort of. So do you think that at this point now, we're talking about the issue of the subsidy removal? Should the government consider some of the private organizations to make life easy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Public-private partnership is the way to go. He made an example of OP. Incidentally, OP has been there for the past 4 years, but people didn't seem to know
Yeah.
because there is this traditional banking operations that I need to go to a brick and mortar bank where I'll see the manager, I see the cashier, I see a human
Yes.
being I can speak with.
Yes.
But pretty much like the mobile phone, when it came, it caught fire. It's like catching fire in Nigeria, but it was already in other climes. So when people are moving it was a radical shift from what they were used to something new.
Yes.
There's always people are a little bit careful. There is skepticism. Like he was talking about being surprised that this platform was working effectively. But if you had known very well the genesis and history of OP and the robust technology and infrastructure that has been put in place, you won't be surprised. Because it came as a result of the CBN's policy on financial inclusion. That when people begin to compare OP, MMM, it's out of ignorance.
Yes.
OP is an MMO, mobile money operator, like that mobile money operator that was licensed by the CBN and also insured by the NDIC. So like any bank, it cannot collapse easily. They are being regulated by the CBN. Everything you do is being regulated by the CBN. And as of today, because of the cashless policy and the new Naira design when there was no money at all, people now started knowing and enjoying those facilities that they didn't know exist. To a point now today, OP has more than 30 million subscribers, who are actively on their platform. Then coming back to your question, it's a given for any government to want to partner with the private organizations who are coming with technology, coming with I was talking about FDI.
Yes.
Now, if you make the place conducive, you'll see more of OPs coming into the country. And then the value chain of that fintech space creates a lot of opportunities for our young people, for job opportunities, and a host of others. I was talking about the three things that may be on table as a way of palliative. I talked about cash transfers to vulnerable families. There's nothing wrong with government, for instance, using organizations like OP, even though they have what they call the e-Naira now, which of course is going to work hand in hand with other fintechs organizations to make such transfers, and you are sure that there won't be any fraud. You are sure that it will not be nobody will take the money away. It will get to the people you really want them to get to, and so forth. And they are playing a very critical role in our trajectory to economic growth. because they are coming with, for instance, we borrowed the financial inclusion innovation from India and China, where that technology has gone really, really far. And we are learning a lot of things from them. In fact, as we move forward, the financial services, fintech services in Nigeria is going to be more robust than you think now. I explained to you earlier, 60% of our population are predominantly youth. They are tech savvy. They do everything on the go. He doesn't have time now to go and queue up in the bank and whatever. If it works for him, and so we have to continue to innovate, and government has to key in and encourage such organizations to support the government. Today in Nigeria, you have about 40, how many million SMEs? I can't remember the exact figure, but it's much. And they are the engine room of any economy. And because our is an informal sector economy, most of these SMEs are the ones who are pushing the engine of growth. So government must work with them, and they are the private sector. So any innovations from the young people, there are young Nigerians who are winning awards in technological innovation.
Yes.
So why don't we ask them to come home and then begin to have indigenous OPs of this world and the rest.
And it's possible that, with some of these policies, if we have the young people just understanding what to do, they'll make it easy. So it might not be as tough as it's looking now. So it could make it life easy for Nigerians.
Yeah. Well, it's as user-friendly as possible. In fact, the way they've done it now is such that any person who has a smartphone can basically have access to financial services without necessarily going to any brick-and-mortar bank.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel Loko. And I'm sure you're wondering, we're talking OPE. Well, that's one of the ways that these policies might not be a stretch on you as a Nigerian. And let me borrow from the words of Prince Yusi Ngawa. He says we should be patient with the government. So I will say that in wrapping up. Thank you so much for coming, Prince Igawa, today.
So
and we hope to see you again. And of course, Dr. Maxwell Loko, we appreciate your coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Can we do this again next time? I hope that you will join us on the Patriot podcast. My name is Dell.